And welcome to Comic Talkers. So comics is always the top of our discussion. My name is Brandon.
And I'm Mary.
And today we continue on with our 52 book club. This time we're at week 44. Fans, we got 8 issues left. And at this point, we have one event in between. If you're here and you have not watched any of this, fans, we keep on expressing to you, please go back. This is a very major issue in this series. So if you have not been here and you're just getting into this and you're seeing what's going to happen in this issue, you're going to miss out on a whole bunch of stuff that's been happening. So our suggestion, please go back. Mary and I have made a beautiful playlist with you for weeks 1 through 43. At this point, 44, so we'll lead you right to this. But yeah, so we're going to just go ahead and get started as we start off in Kahndaq. And as Isis kind of tells them some of the stuff that's going on, that that none of the crops are growing, pretty much unrest is still heading, it's really chaosing throughout Kahndaq right now. And all of a sudden, a strike of lightning hits Black Adam. And when Isis goes down to try to see if he's okay and everything, he goes, I feel stronger. They have returned to me. And she goes, what has? And he goes, the powers of Osiris. Now, last week, we saw Osiris give up his powers. He feels that him having these powers is what's caused all this stuff to happen in Kahndaq. And Sobek takes advantage of that and kills him. And we find out he has been the missing 4 horsemen from Oolong Island. And I love the title of this book. It's called Deaths in the Family instead of Death in the Family. Like, so original, But they do go to the embassy and they do see Amon's body literally just sitting there, dead. It's a corpse at this point.
It's like almost fully decomposed.
And Isis, of course, starts to scream and she goes, do something, Adam. And pretty much Adam goes over there, takes his cape off, and puts it over his body. There's nothing he can do at this point. And even Isis kept on saying, why did he change? Why did he change back? And all of a sudden, we hear a voice. Osiris believed his powers were the cause of Kahndaq's misery. What a fool. And it was Sobek. Sobek's been standing there, and he goes, for all he tried to do to sweeten his soul, his flesh tasted like rotten chicken. He was too stringy. He's too stuck between my teeth. And when they question if it was him, he goes, I was so awfully hungry. I'm always hungry, and only the flesh of a marvel can satisfy me. That's the way they made me. I am not only Sobek the crocodile man. I am Yurd the unknown. I am famine. You always wonder why at this point, why do they make famine a crocodile of all things?
Yeah, I mean, I feel too that like if they were making him specifically to get after the marbles, knowing where they live, and especially how Black Adam has fashioned himself, that this was like it's what made sense.
Yeah.
But also like really? If it makes sense because he's like the god Sobek. Now this is something that like I'm actually working with my students on right now because we're talking about ancient Egypt. Um, but like some ancient Egyptian sects believe that Sobek created order in the universe and that he was the creator of the Nile River and is associated with fertility. So like this, there are a lot of things that confuse me about this.
So they're pretty much pulling a Mike Mignola and Hellboy and not really understanding the history of the god.
And I talked about that too, and we already looked at like the names that they're using for Adriana and her brother.
Now
choices were made.
Choices were made. Osiris, of course, Isis kind of states, Osiris was your friend. He saved you from Dr. Savannah's lab. And Sobek goes off and says, I said I've been left there after Dr. Savannah disappeared. but I lied. I was sent to the Savannah home hours before you arrived. And this was back in week 26 is when we meet Sobek. And this is when the Marvel family's there to talk with Savannah's family to try to help wherever they can. And he continues on by saying, you're all so desperate to help the poor and unfortunate. A plan was hatched to gain your family's sympathy and infiltrate it by posing as a confused and scared talking animal. And Isis, this is one of my favorite scenes when you see the lightning in the back and you just see tears rolling down her face. And she goes, we treated you like family. We loved you. He goes, what does a reptile need love for? My blood is cold. Intergang offered you everything that they could for safe passage through Kahndaq. You said no, and now you and your family are a threat to Intergang's ever-growing religion of crime. That is why we were brought here. And when Adam hears that, Adam goes, we? And he states, me and my siblings, war, pestilence, and death. Some call us the Monster Society, but we are the four ages of dread of apocalypse and its anguished, bloody mourning. Our influence over the last several weeks and the true cause of Kahndaq's misery. And it will be the cause of yours. And all four horsemen start to attack Black Adam and Isis. And Sobek is the one that tries to tackle Black Adam down. But Black Adam pretty much states, of course, Isis is screaming his name, and he goes, these are not men, Isis. Sobek said it himself. They are monsters. He kills Sobek right then and there by opening up his jaw and pretty much cracking.
You know what? Good for him.
Yeah, he needs that. Get some rage off with some monsters. But then Adam starts to attack War next. And War pretty much almost puts Adam in his place. And
almost, yeah.
He goes, you do not have the power of war, Black Adam. I do. I have the power of all the world's soldiers and missiles and bombs. Those are my gods. And we also see Pestilence. And Pestilence is trapping Isis kind of in a corner a little bit. And you just see this. The best way to explain this is simple. You ever seen wrestlers? They have mist in their mouth and they spit it out. Think of that with Pestilence. Pestilence is just spewing out pretty much disease and pestilence, pretty much, on Isis. Isis still fights back at this point, and Isis does get the better hand, and she does kind of help Black Adam in this case by throwing Pestilence at War. Actually, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. He throws them at War. Because then both of them can team up now at this point. And as she states, Adam, my blood grows cold. Can you feel it? Death walks in.
So this is where we see, and he's pretty clearly fashioned after almost like Anubis, again from Egyptian mythology. This one actually tracks because Anubis is associated with death. He is a chthonic deity. Good job. You got one right.
Yay! What's their reward? Just good.
Probably me criticizing more things. And they say, and so we see War say, you have been marked by the stare of Ruiz?
As Ruiz. That's what I was saying.
He has chosen you both for death, and you will suffer through it. And we see Black Adam get thrown into a statue of Isis with two young boys, and he knocks her head clean off. This is excellent foreshadowing, by the way. Yeah. War has always been the source of your sorrow. Your wife and children died in a war you were not here to fight. They die again in a war you cannot win. Your oldest son begged for his life. He was a coward. And we see Pestilence take out Adriana. And he says, I have spread my disease across her and inside her. And he turns to Death and says, she is ready for you. And we see Adriana basically succumb to Pestilence as Black Adam is fighting the war.
Mhm.
And he does eventually mostly take out War. And then he goes to turn to Death. And Adriana, using the last string, says, Earth, bring forth your lava, send Death into the sky, send him away from my husband. And then we see a voice say, you have done it, Isis. Death flees. And then you wanted to touch on this part, Brandon.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite parts of the whole issue. Is when Black Adam cradles Isis. At this point, Isis is dying. And she states, all we tried to do, my brother tried to do. Of course, Adam kind of interrupts and says, I will take you to the Rock of Eternity. Billy will be able to. And she goes, I see it now. Your way kept Kahndaq and its people safe. Do not give up. And of course, Black Adam goes, do not give up hope. You taught me never to give up. And she goes, I was wrong. And he goes, I believe in you. And she states, I was wrong, Adam. It was never you that needed redemption. It was the rest of the world of men that made such horrible creatures. The evil needs to die. I thought we could be above them, but for the pain they have put our family through, avenge us. And for the first time ever, it's like, even Mary pointed this out, it's the first time you've ever heard him call her Adriana.
Basically since they met.
And now I want to talk about this because she does bring up a good point. For somebody who always felt that Black Adam needed to change, he is the source. And we've seen that since the beginning of this story, where you see him rip Terra Man in half in front of the Kahndaq embassy in New York. At this point, what's your take on her words here? Because it's very powerful what she tells him.
Yeah, so I feel like part of this is really representative of the way that war changes people.
Mm-hmm.
Adriana has hope until she believes in humanity, and I feel like that's her greatest strength throughout the entire comic thus far.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that faith in humanity that ends up being her downfall. And when the literal personification of war itself comes to their door,
Mm-hmm.
and she sees the way that Intergang has bought people who are willing to cause this kind of destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's specifically the kind of destruction against Kahndaq and against these people that have done nothing wrong, just to target them. I feel like that's what really makes her turn.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like too is that there is part of this missing picture, right? Where part of why they're being targeted is because of how Adam used to be. It's not necessarily like he's not right, but I understand why she's changed her mind.
Yeah. One other big thing I'll bring up too is that she says it as Isis, because she does transform back to Adriana when she does take her final breath. But she says it as Isis of all people too. And that's what makes it so interesting to see that even more. But you would think that too, because she was saved by him because Intergang brought her to him.
Yeah.
And you would think that too, but it's a whole thing of, what, that was always been one of my favorite statements. It's probably her whole perspective changed. But we will get more to that later on, because that is going to set up a pretty big thing in the storyline for the rest of the issues, along with World War III. But also there is a book called Black Adam and the Dark Ages, which kind of ties into this a little bit more too. So fans, if you have never read it, Will and I did a coverage of it a while back, so you can go check it out. But also too, if you want to go pick it up, go pick it up. It's easy to get.
And if you remember our Ant-Man versus Atom Smasher battle, I do talk a little bit about what's coming there.
Yes. So here's where we're going to end this issue, though. We go to Nandan Prabhat. which at this point, Renee's there with Tot and Richard Dragon. And I love this whole panel where you see this rose that Isis gave her starts to deteriorate bit by bit. And Renee goes right away. He's dead. And of course, when Tot says, or pretty much, Renee kind of states, Isis is dead. Whatever happened, it can't be good. Adam and Osiris, what will they do now? How will they cope? And Tot goes, find out. And when she questions him, even Richard goes, go and find out. There are a lot of answers to be found in Nanda Parbat, no question about it. None of them are going to satisfy you. Not one of them is the one you're looking for. Pretty much, he gives her his uniform, or gives her questions uniform, and pretty much tells him that he pretty much did the same stuff that Question had. That she will have the gas, she's going to have the shampoo, she's got a lot of things that she can do. And when she states when Tot brings it up to him, I'm not him. I'm not going to be him. And Tot goes, believe me, Miss Montoya, I'm painfully aware of that fact. And Richard goes, of course not. You're going to be yourself. That's the way it should be. And Tot goes, that's what Sage wanted. And even Dragon goes, you saw your reflection in the cave, Renee. You saw yourself without ego, without distortion, selfless, and ideal. And he goes, when she questions that she doesn't know what to say or anything, he goes, sure you do. It just makes you uncomfortable. It scares you. It should. And even Renee goes, reassuring, is this another lesson about letting go? Is that what this is? Cease being myself to become myself? And he goes, lovely paradox, a lot like life. Well, I don't need a mask for that. Renee goes. And Dragon puts the hat on top of her head and states, you're going to find out, or find, like Sage did, that some questions can only be answered by wearing a mask. Just as there are some that can only be asked when you remove one. So start in Kahndaq and see where it leads you. It's one of my favorite panels when she's holding the hat and tears just starts rolling down her eye. This will end this issue. It's a pretty big long issue. There's a lot that happens in this issue. We are going to pick up with week 45 next week, where we do kind of see what happens after the events of Kahndaq. Renee goes and sees them. There's a lot that will happen here too. So fans, I'm going to address it again. Please go watch weeks 1 through 44 till we get to this point. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to get all the latest updates on the podcast for Comic Talkers. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like this video and you want more. Hit the like button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell notification so you never miss an episode. Also, check Mary, myself, and our other teammates of Comic Talkers on Spotify for podcasters, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts for other great anime and comic book content. And without further ado, my name is Brandon.
And I'm Mary.
And may comics always be the top of your discussion.